Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I'm glad we're having this hearing. Consider this. In fiscal year 2017, which included the end of the Obama administration and the beginning of the Trump administration, 303,000 people were apprehended at the border. 75,000, that included 75,000 families, 41,000 unaccompanied children. While only 2 months on the job, President Trump bragged about the results. On March 26, 2017, he tweeted, and I quote, "General Kelly's doing a great job at the border. Numbers are way down. Many are not even trying to come in anymore." Here we are 2 years later. The numbers are way up on President Trump's watch. Only 6 months into fiscal year 2019, only halfway into 2019, 361,000 people have already been apprehended at the border, including 189,000 family units and 36,000 unaccompanied children. That's more total apprehensions in the first half of this fiscal year than in the entire fiscal year 2017. So the president has changed his message. On March 7th, he tweeted, and I quote, "We are on track to apprehend more than 1 million people coming across the southern border this year. Can be fixed by Congress so easily and quickly if only the Democrats would get on board." So when the numbers were way down, the president took credit. But now that the numbers are up, it turns out it's the Democrats. Let's look at the facts. During less than 2.5 years of the Trump administration, the Department of Homeland Security has been in chaos. There have already been 4 different heads of the department: Secretary John Kelly, Acting Secretary Elaine Duke, Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen, and now Acting Secretary Kevin McAleenan. And there have already been 4 acting directors of Immigration and Customs Enforcement in 2 years, and 3 nominees to head ICE. 1 year ago, this week, on May 7th, 2018, then Attorney General Sessions announced a Get Tough policy, the full implementation of the administration's disastrous zero-tolerance policy, which led to the separation of at least 2,880 infants, toddlers, and children from their parents. Thanks to an investigation by the Inspector General that I requested, we now know that before that announcement, thousands more children may have been separated by this administration in pursuit of the policy before it was announced. Just 2 weeks ago, Federal District Court Judge Dana Sabrow from California ordered the administration to begin efforts to identify and reunite these families. This government-sanctioned zero-tolerance policy was a failure and, sadly, a sad commentary on America. The president was forced to reverse his position on this, and though he's hinted that he might return to it again, I pray that he won't. I went to an immigration court hearing last July in Chicago, in a high-rise in the Loop. The hallways were packed with people whose names were on the docket. I met the immigration court judge. She'd been at it for 18 years. I believe that she was a conscientious, professional, caring person. She was overwhelmed by the numbers facing her. She asked if I'd stay for the first 2 clients on the docket. The first one, she said, everyone should get in their chairs for this hearing. There's a difficulty. One of the clients couldn't get in her chair. You see, Marta was 2 years old. She needed to be lifted up and put in the chair and handed a stuffed animal. Hamilton, the 4-year-old boy, scrambled into his chair when he saw the Matchbox car on the table. That was the zero-tolerance policy. Those 2 children had been separated from their parents for months. Experts tell us that can have a lasting impact on a child's development. Luckily, we've abandoned that policy, and I hope we don't return to it in an effort to get tough. And let's not forget that earlier this year, the president forced the longest government shutdown in history in an effort to get Congress to pay for a wall that Mexico was supposed to build. The Trump shutdown paralyzed the very immigration courts I've just described and added to the backlog of cases. These courts play a critical role in processing cases of migrants seeking asylum. I wish we could hear from the Justice Department immigration judges about that backlog at some future hearing. The reality is the Trump administration's policies has made our borders less secure and many times undermined our American values. When the president threatens to shut down the border, It's like a neon sign that transporters, smugglers, and others use to encourage desperate families to flee as quickly as possible. I'd say to Chief Provost, I had a chance to visit on April 12th down at El Paso, and I want to thank all the people that I met and join with the chairman in saluting them. I want to especially thank the gentleman, the officer from the Border Patrol, the fact that he was from Chicago and a Cubs fan notwithstanding. He gave me a real insight into the challenge that the men and women of the Border Patrol are facing down there. But I can tell you this is not their doing, but the president's suggestion of cutting out all assistance to the Northern Triangle countries, El Salvador, Guatemala, and Honduras, and shutting down avenues for legal migration just guarantees more refugees will flow to our border. I'm sorry we couldn't have the State Department here to tell us a little bit about that aspect of the challenge. The president has pulled off a rare unassisted triple play with this border policy. It's cruel, it's unpredictable, and it's ineffective. The administration and its allies in Congress argue that critical humanitarian protections are actually a magnet drawing vulnerable families and children to our country. They claim with a straight face that we can better protect these migrants by making it easier to detain them indefinitely and deport them without due process. But if people were migrating to the United States simply because of so-called legal loopholes, they would be coming from all over the region. Instead, more than 90% of the unaccompanied children come from 3 countries in the Northern Triangle. There's zero evidence to support the conclusion that repealing TVPRA and overturning the Flores settlement will actually deter migrants. In fact, the administration's already imposed numerous restrictions on asylum that have not deterred these desperate families and children. They don't address the root causes of why they're coming. Democrats are serious about this situation and believe we need to work together to solve it. In February, after the president finally ended his government shutdown, a number of us joined with the Republicans and wrote an omnibus appropriation bill. It included $564 million for inspection equipment at the ports of entry, a suggestion that came from now Acting Secretary McAleenan, and $414 million for humanitarian assistance, long overdue. We can do more to make sure, even in the midst of a political controversy, that our treatment of these desperate people reflects who we are as Americans. In the last Congress, Democrats introduced the Central America Reform and Enforcement Act as a comprehensive response. I'm announcing that next week we'll reintroduce it. It'll address the root causes in the Northern Triangle, crack down on cartels and traffickers, provide for in-country processing of refugees so they don't have to make the trek across Mexico, expand third country resettlement in Mexico and other Central American countries, and eliminate the immigration court backlog. We stand ready as Democrats to work with the Republicans and the president on smart, effective, and humane border security policies. I hope that we can do this together.